Okay. Welcome, everybody, to the Mixmaster Wyatt Show. Today we have Richie Beretta, who just struggled to beat his Wi-Fi into shape and got in at the last minute, just like California Chrome. California Chrome. What's up, Richie?
What up?
How are you, man?
Fantastic.
Because I'm so happy to have you, and you just won't be defeated. Not even Wi-Fi can get you down.
Not even Wi-Fi is going to hold me down.
Well, welcome to the show. Lots to talk about today. We also have some very special guests in the audience today, mixing and mastering experts from across the globe, Dubspot students and graduates and teachers. And Richie is one of the newest teachers at Dubspot in the mixing and mastering department, and he went right to work, and he's teaching lots and lots of classes in the New York City school. But he also has a very, very healthy freelance business in New York City, and he's going to tell us all about that, and works for big names, Diplo and Major Lazer, and just did a Beyonce remix that he produced and mixed that went to #1 in the Billboard charts. So it's been a busy, and I know all kinds of other stuff that happened. There was a flood. We'll talk about everything. I know. All right, Richie, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you.
Okay, so tell us a little bit. This is where we get a little Oprah, a little Barbara Walters here on the show, and if we can cry, then we've really achieved something together.
I just finished crying.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
You feel cleansed?
Yeah.
Okay, good. But tell us a little bit, just on the personal tip, a little bit about your journey, your odyssey. How you got into music. I know you're from a musical family. Tell us a little bit about that.
So, my dad, I was lucky enough to grow up in a house where music was like a big thing. My father was in a band when he was younger, and he was signed to a label that became RCA. It was called Family Productions in '71, and the guy who signed him also discovered Billy Joel. And they were the two main acts, but my dad decided to have a family instead of pursuing the music thing. And when I was born, like, the first thing he did was get me a drum set, and I was keeping neighbors up since I was 2. So I still keep neighbors up.
So you started with drums.
Yeah.
But I know there was then bass came into the picture at some point as well, right?
I basically ran through the gamut of instruments. When my neighbors literally were complaining that, like, you can't have this kid banging away on drums anymore. So I said, all right, I'm going to learn how to play piano. And I went from piano to guitar, and I don't know if you guys can see, but my hands aren't really that big. They were. So when I was like, I don't know how old, I think I was like, let's see, 10 years old, 9 years old, when I wanted to learn to play guitar, and I couldn't change chords fast enough. So I told my dad, I was like, can I play? Maybe I'll play bass. There's only 4 strings. You play one note at a time. I don't need big hands for that. And bass stuck as my main instrument. And I started to, like, sneak out of the house and find bands to play with, like, at a really young age, and just always wanted to be making music with people. So then my mom kind of caught wind of me, like, breaking rules to play rock and roll, and she made me play the flute. And I played the flute from flute from 6th grade to 8th grade, and
wow.
That was great though too, because I learned a lot of. I was classically trained. I learned to sight read. It helps in mixing. Like, there's not too many engineers anymore that can pick a note, note pitch, can correct things, and in editing, certain mistakes may go under the radar, which is, I think, why all this technology has advanced so much. So it substitutes for training, but that's I guess that's a conversation for another day.
Well, maybe, or we'll move forward to that. So now, when you started off, I know you were kind of like a rock kid, right?
Yeah.
Was that the first music that made sense to you in high
Um,
school, or how did it work out?
so I grew up in two areas, and I was lucky enough to grow up in both of them. One was Gravesend in Brooklyn, and there's a very famous metal club that is not there anymore called L'Amour's. That was close to the house, and I saw Metallica there like when I was like 7, and it was heavy metal kind of. It was just energetic, loud. I don't know if it really was about the music, but it was definitely a cool vibe. Um, but then when I moved to Queens, when we moved out of Brooklyn, we moved to an area called Woodhaven, which was close to East New York, and it's way more urban than Gravesend, and way more culturally diverse. So I got into hip hop and reggae, specifically reggae, because it was a big Caribbean. I think there still is actually in Richmond Hill. It's still a big Caribbean neighborhood, and I found myself being like excited about a completely different ethnic style of music, but I felt the same way as I would, with metal, and then like I guess like towards high school I got into punk rock, and that was sort of fun. I still listen to that stuff now, like on my way to school, like I'll listen to all the stuff I listened to in high school, kind of.
To take you back.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
But
and then the bands I know you were in a band, and you guys had major label interest, and kind of talk a little bit about the whole band experience.
I was in a bunch of different bands since I started playing music. It was basically I was in like a weird like hardcore reggae band once, like for like 5 minutes, and they were like, "Yeah, we need a bassist." And I was like, "All right, yeah, sure." And then another band like would be like this like street punk band that would write about like politics, and I had no idea what everyone was singing about. They're like, "We need a guitarist." I'm like, "Okay, cool." And then so it was basically I would be in a band with anybody that would have me, just because I needed to get out of my house and experience life. But there came a point around my senior year of high school where it's just like I want to start. I was already writing songs for the bands. They were like, "Oh, you could do this, do it for us." But I wasn't the leader, and I was like, "I want to be the leader of a band." So uh, I started my own band, and we got kind of popular locally, and that at the time attracted attention of some like MCA when that was still around, and Elektra, and that was my like this pop punk band that I was in.
What was that band called?
Know It All.
Know It All. Okay,
Yeah.
all right, good,
Yeah.
good. And so what happened with that?
It was we kind of just disintegrated. It stopped being fun after like 3 years, and I was the one just doing everything after a while. And we kind of just like we fell apart. But we had one big showcase with MCA that was supposed to take place on 9/11, and that didn't happen.
No.
And after that, I wasn't really in. I didn't know too many people in the music industry, so I didn't understand why. Oh, sorry, that was the.
It's all right. Real life.
Yeah.
Hope it's a pizza.
I'm doing my laundry,
Sushi.
guys.
It's laundry. Okay, good. See, he still does his own laundry. Not for long. Not for long. So,
Yeah.
yes.
So after that, nobody was answering phone calls.
Yeah.
It was like radio silence. So that kind of discouraged us, and we're just like, let's hang it up. And my drummer, like, what really kind of, with a linchpin for the whole thing was, we were supposed to have one practice, a writing session, and my drummer's like, "Hey, I'm upstate. I'm in Iona. I'm in a Dave Matthews cover band tonight. We're playing like the Levee," and I'm like, "You should come up." And I'm like, "Fuck out of here." Sorry, man. Sorry.
It's all right. No, it's all right. It's all right.
I was like, that was it. And then I was like, that was it. And then
that was it. And then so then. It's so many people, I think, come out of band experiences and they just find that bands are just too democratic, too chaotic.
Yeah.
People, we always joked in my band experience that, we ended up fighting about money that didn't exist yet.
Yeah.
That's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And so I think people turn towards electronic music production because they can be the whole band. You can argue with yourself, and I'm sure you do, and I also argue with myself sometimes, but it's still sometimes better. And there's something about having that much control, and now with all the technology, being able to make such a big sound. So how did you transition into producing? When did that happen?
I didn't know it, but I always produced, and it wasn't up until I was an assistant to a pretty popular producer, rock producer, Mark Trombino, where he was like kind of open up a new lingo and new like basically a whole new world that seemed new to me. But as he explained, he was like, "Yeah, you've been doing this all along," and he kind of suggested, he's like, "Why don't you get into it?" Um, so that's
And
how
when,
I.
how long ago was that? When was that?
2002.
Okay,
It
so
was after Know It All. I was in another band called Tiger Uppercut, which was sort of like a different venture. It was a little bit more mature, and we we pulled some interest from Hollywood Records, and the A&R was in another band, and his producer was Mark Trombino, and they put out a record that really didn't do so well, but he had introduced me to him, and I kind of nixed the connection with Hollywood Records, but kept the connection with Trombino when he was in New York making this guy's record, and so he let me hold his clipboard and just like watch and stuff like that, and he was sort of I got to pick up I think I picked up the most I've ever picked up in a short amount of time.
okay.
With that
So
guy, right?
he was sort of the first mentor.
Yeah.
And when did you open up your first studio? Where was that?
Um,
When did you start having clients and that kind of a thing?
well, there was a time where I kind of was just like frustrated with the music thing, and I sold all my old Pro Tool stuff and got Ableton. This was like around 2007, and that's when I also got into electronic music. Because again, I could do whatever I want. You had drum samples. I'm the drummer. And I don't have to actually record anything. And I mixed a record for my friend's band in Ableton, and he was like, "No, you should do this. Get paid for it." And I'm like, "Yeah, all right." So I put out Craigslist ads, like, "Hey, I'll mix your song. I'll make it sound great," and I would just mix for like $50, whatever, just to mix. And then I started realizing that there's still that energy there. So I saved up a ton of money and worked all these weird jobs and didn't sleep for like 4 years. And then in 2011, I opened up a place in East Village called Seven Sound, and that was like our studio. That was like the production company. I was working predominantly with a lot of independents, like nobody famous. Just people who wanted to have their music sound good, which was what was driving me. I had really no aspiration to get popular. I just wanted to not rip people off, basically, because that's why my band wanted to get signed. That's why everybody wanted to get signed back then, was because no one cared about your record. And so it was important to me to help other people. And then that kind of trickled. I don't know. It became a cascade effect, and then I met Jillionaire from Major Lazer, and then Diplo, and then I met a couple of other well-known like New York nightlife personalities who wanted to get into music, and that's how I came across Dustbot. We started a label, our lawyers Dustbot's label.
Yeah, I remember.
It's all like a domino effect. But it was in 2011 when I opened up the studio, and I just wanted to help people make good music.
And so who taught you how to use a compressor? Who taught you how to use EQ? Was it under your mentor? Did you figure it out? Did you go to school?
No.
How did you figure it all out?
That's a good question. When I was assisting, and by assisting I mean like getting coffee and wiping up puke.
Yes.
Literally, that's what happens when you're an assistant producer. Like, I didn't know anything about compression. Or EQs. I knew EQs from guitars, and bass. So you have EQ on your amp. I knew about high, low, mid, but that was it. And then when I first got my first Pro Tool system, I would open up like Waves Q8, and I saw the graph, the equalizer, the parametric EQ, and I'm like, oh, this is like the guitar thing, and I would overdo it, and then no one really would teach me anything. Like I paid for studio time, like I paid Avatar. Like I was like, hey, listen, is it cool if I sit in a session? I paid Electric Ladyland back in the day to sit in on a stroke session so I could just see what's going on. And like the engineers would just like put like black cloth over there.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like, they won't show you anything. So
Yeah.
I was like, I'm wasting money really quickly. So I just reading.
Self-taught. We call it.
Yeah.
There's a word for it. It's
Yeah.
called an autodidact. And
Yeah, well, yeah.
And the fact is, from my experience too, I was lucky to get into a time in the major label business when it was thriving, and I had all these amazing engineers around me that I watched, and I didn't know too much at that time, but I would watch them and also teach yourself. And it wasn't, and we'll talk about teaching in a minute, but for me, it wasn't until I started to teach that I really filled in all the little holes in my gaps of knowledge. It was teaching. I learned the most starting to teach, and it actually made me much, much better at my craft, which is just the amazing experience about teaching. So then, all right, so the engineering kicked back in. You linked up with Major Lazer, Diplo, other New York personalities. Then the studio moved to Stuyvesant Town, right? Yeah. Was that after
that was the first location.
That was the first location.
That was the first location, and then the apartment that I had the studio in was a part of this crazy class action lawsuit where they deregulated a lot of apartments illegally, and they were kicking out families. It was crazy. It was nuts. Mine was one of them, and they boosted the rent, and I didn't want to pay it, so I said, I'm not going to pay this. And they were like, well, you got to pay it. I was like, I'm not going to pay it. And then back and forth. All right, we'll try and help you out, and then no one will call you back. So I just stopped paying rent. I was like, they're going to kick me out. I'm not going to pay this rent, And I didn't not pay the rent out of spite. I just wanted them to call me back. So they're not going to call me back while I'm paying them, I thought. And so I'm not going to pay them, and they're going to call me up and we can talk. So they finally did that after like 4 months. I didn't pay any rent. And they called me back, and they're like, hey, where's our money? And I'm like, well, I don't want to pay these increases, I told you. And they gave me a deal where I could split without a penalty, but I have to be out like in 5 days or so. It was like a month. I had to be out in a month. So I had to find a new place in Queens, where I'm from. So I was just like, I kind of want to go back to the basics. And then a week after, I have this, this was after a month of negotiating. My toilet bowl explodes in the middle of the night.
I hate it when that happens.
Yeah, right? Right? And floods the whole place out.
That's insane.
My house just smelled like Grand Central bathroom.
Yeah.
So I left with 2 dogs, boxes everywhere. It was nuts.
Sewage on the floor.
Oh, yeah, it was great.
Most of the studio was okay, but you did lose some stuff, right?
Yeah, I lost a pretty old synthesizer, and I'm not really a synth guy. It was just that it was given. It was my father's. He gave it to me. It was DX7, and I lost that. I also lost the RX11 drum machine by Yamaha, which is also pretty sentimental. Yeah. I sold most of my drum machines. I was obsessed with drum machines forever, and I sold a bunch of stuff. Like I sold a lot of records and like all these things that I collected a while ago just by gear. And I'm not really a synth like an analog guy like let's say Duke is or Adriano at Dubspot. Like those guys are like on another level. Like, but I do like the DX7. Maybe it's because I like Phil Collins. I don't know, but I like the DX7, and I don't have it anymore. So it got flooded. And my laptop. It
will come back to you,
Yeah.
And it won't smell like sewage, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Your karma. Your Phil Collins. Phil Collins will come to you in a dream. Phil Collins will visit you like Obi-Wan and bring you a DX7. I'm sure that is your karma. So now with the Beyonce remix, so you're engineering a lot, but then you still wanted to be creative and produce, right?
Yeah, so I found myself tweaking the songs that people were just bringing mixes, and that I couldn't separate. At the time, I couldn't separate my mixing engineer brain and my production brain, and then that became writing, and then that's why I opened something up, because I was writing. What would happen is a client would come in or an artist would come in and say, "Hey, I need this mixed," and then I'd be like, well, you know, the song kind of sucks. I wouldn't, you know, not that
No,
bluntly,
a
but I would
little
say
harsh.
that, and
Yeah.
the song could be better, and then we'd make it better, you know, together. And it was really great to see artists develop, and it was cool sharing things that they may have not otherwise have known unless they met me, you know. And then it opens, you know, my whole motto is like, look, you have so much to worry about as an artist. Music can't be one of them anymore, you know, especially nowadays. You have to talk, you know, consider marketing and your branding, and you have to. It's a trend. Like music is you're selling a lifestyle now. You're not just selling sounds. So it was my job to sort of be a artistic director of their music, and that's what it turned out to be. It's like a one-stop shop. You come in with an idea and you leave with an album. That's the principle.
And right, but and for the Beyonce remix, it was all you. This was
Yeah,
an all you thing.
I did a Kanye bootleg that got pretty popular, and her A&R hit me up, and that was all through an artist. Her A&R manages an artist that I produced, and he was like, "Hey, do you want to do a Beyonce thing?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And I they wanted a dance thing, and it's not that I don't like dance music. It's just that uh, I love making it. It's fun. I like, you know, in a club, I like to listen to it, but it's hard to be different when you know, everything is sort of the same. So I did like this Moomba reggae thing because reggae's, you know, big influence on me, and I was like, you know what, she's not going to pick this because, you know, I thought she wanted like Avicii or something.
Sure.
But they picked it. They picked it, and it was
That's
the only
amazing.
one that went to number one. I completely not, and then the other one went to number one too. So because I did one that did so well, they let me do Drunken Love and Partition, but Partition didn't get picked. Partition, I went a little bit too yeah.
Well, you got to take risks, and you've been
Yeah.
winning, so it's all. Don't go changing.
Yeah, no,
And
it's
then
great.
what did?
Drunken Love went to number one.
Amazing.
That was the only one that won. That was the only one that went to number one. The highest one was Diplo's after mine, and that only went to 32. And that was Drunken Love. That was the one that was the single. You know, Blow didn't even get marketed. There was no marketing for it, and it went to number one. So it was very cool. You know, it was definitely very
Did
cool.
Beyonce text you?
Yeah, she sent me a T-shirt, and I gave it to Lydia.
That's awesome.
Yeah, 'cause she's a big Beyonce fan.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So now, what is your process when you do the remixes? Are you in Ableton? You're in Logic?
Ableton.
In Ableton.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I like to use Ableton. I have a love-hate relationship with Ableton and Pro Tools. I'm sure everyone has a love-hate relationship with any DAW they have.
Sure.
But I'm going to be moving to Cubase for my
Welcome.
production.
Come in. The water's nice. Jump in.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
I just haven't gotten around to it, but I'm coming.
Come
So save a
in.
seat.
You and me will be the only two Cubase users in the United States. You know,
Yeah,
you know,
a lot of people use it. A lot of people mix on it too. You know, just like you. But like,
yeah.
my good friend of mine, who's an incredibly talented engineer, Cubase. He'll Pro Tools in the studio, Cubase at home, that's where, you know, when he does his stuff or anything that really matters to him, and his stuff sounds like incredible from his house.
Yeah.
So if I had it, you know, I would love to work in one DAW and do production in one DAW if I wasn't doing so many Pro Tools things.
No. Pro Tools is the United States industry standard, so you can't
Yeah,
get away
yeah.
from Pro Tools in commercial music. But the sound of Cubase is just incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's great.
And the workflow is incredible. I even got Chris Petty, who's the curriculum director for Dubspot, on it, and he said, you know, I've been curious about this, and I used to use it, and I want to get back to it. And then he started blowing up my phone with texts like,
Really,
this
Petty?
is amazing. You know,
Yeah,
so
Petty was the guy that put me onto it. He was like,
yeah,
you gotta check
okay,
this
good,
out, man.
good. We'll have a gang sign, a Cubase gang sign or something. I don't know, some kind of crip walk.
Yeah.
Thing. We'll figure out something, so we can see each other on the street and just secretly acknowledge each other.
Yeah, right.
So all right. So
Backward.
how long did it take you to do the remix? How long did it take you to do Blow?
Well,
Was it a week? Was it one long night?
I got 2 weeks to do it, but I was in the middle of like 3 projects, so basically I got 4 days to do it. I finished it Christmas Eve.
Wow.
Was when I did the production day before Christmas Eve, mixing Christmas Eve and then sent on Christmas. And they were like, we need it by the 25th. Beyonce, doesn't she celebrate Christmas?
Come on,
Yeah, does she not take a day off? So, yeah, they don't give you really a lot of time. But I was, believe it or not, the drop in that song, because writing drops is a difficult thing for me because they're simple. So it's like, what sound do you pick? What one sound do you pick to play? Nah, 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 nah. What sound is that? It has to be awesome. It's one thing. People like take that for granted. They're like, we can write a drop. It's one note, but it has to be hot. It's the hook. That's one note and one sound. So it's a little daunting for me. So I always save it for last. Like, I didn't have enough time to write anything, so I looked in my library of stuff that wasn't being used at the moment, and something I wrote in a van after the Mad Decent Block Party, the 2012 Block Party, I think. I was at the Philly show, and I was working, doing a show there with them, and that was supposed to be a song that me and Jillionaire, the other dude in Major Lazer, we're supposed to put out. We're always supposed to put out a record, and it never happened. So I was in the van. I was like, we're gonna make one right now. I got Ableton. and it never happened. So I took that, and I was like, I think Chris is gonna be pissed because this is supposed to be ours. And I was like, whatever, and threw it in there. I hated it actually because it was at 128 BPM, but I slowed it down to the 115, and it sounded great, and that's how that happened. But everything else, like the guitars and the organ in it, and like a lot of the reggae skanks and stuff like that, that's stuff that I have fun doing. So it's sort of like I don't see that really as work. I could get that. I could crank that out.
And that comes from your earlier history, just playing instruments.
If you put a guitar in my hand, you put an instrument in my hand, and it's fun. Yeah. I still get that feeling, like where it's like, oh, shit, this is great. So I'm always gonna get that feeling. It's like slamming my hand in a car door. I'm like, I haven't played the guitar in months, like what feels like a month, maybe more months, because everything was packed away. Yeah. So I'm a little on edge.
Well, it's nice weather now in New York. You can sit outside under cherry blossoms and play guitar and recover from what was a long winter with sewage flooding and stuff.
Yeah.
And now you're teaching now. It's kind of a new experience for you to teach. What is some of the how's that working out? How do you feel about teaching? What has it taught you?
Teaching is great. When I started, it was a little bit nerve-wracking. I know, it was nerve-wracking because I remember, and I still remember, I learn every day. Like you were saying, like when you teach, you learn more. It's like, it's like shooting jump shots. I'm shooting like 2,000 jump shots a day. When it's time to mix, it's like done.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
But I remember vividly, what it was like to be frustrated with myself, with music, with why my stuff didn't sound good enough. It didn't compete with what was on the radio, and that's what it's all about. It isn't what it's all about, but for the most part, it is. But I remembered, like in my head, I was like, oh man, I know I'm going to connect with everybody. I know exactly what they're thinking, and I had a 6-hour. My first class was a 6-hour class on Saturday. I'm like, I have my hard drive filled with all these things that are from my studio. They're going to be, I'm going to show them, like, look, I made this, this is out now. This is out. This is being sold. So, you could take this for, a rule of thumb if you like. And I got, Michelle introduced me to the class. I got up and I dropped the hard drive and it broke. I had no material. I had no material for the class. And I was like, oh my goodness. So I tried to like play it smooth, so I told, I don't be like, my hard drive. I didn't worry Michelle because it was the first day of class.
Sure.
And so I was like, hey, I don't know why the computer's not reading my hard drive. I plugged it in. I knew it was going to break. Drop it.
Theatricality, sure.
Right. I was like, hey, it's not reading. Maybe you should get a tech. And you get a tech up there. But, I was lucky I had a backup on WeTransfer because I knew something was going to happen.
That's so
but it was great. it's very it's just a cool thing. It's a very cool thing because I care about other people's music, which is the reason why I started Seven Sound. And then as I started working with more artists, it was harder for me to help out other artists, because people who work in 95, they can't come in all the time, or maybe they can't afford it, or it was getting difficult to work with everybody, both, and I was toying with the idea of maybe teaching to sort of satisfy that urge to spread knowledge or something, and yeah, my girlfriend's going to get cheese.
You gotta get cheese.
Yeah.
You have to get some cheese.
Yeah, so
it's a satisfying thing to teach.
Yeah, it's cool. I like to see people grow, and it's very important. I think it's important for anybody that knows something or can do something to share that, to not keep it a secret, because it's about the industry. It's about, I think I don't know if the old CEO of General Motors, I forget his name, the dude's like a genius, and I was watching some seminar that he was given, this was years ago, and he said something that stuck with me. He was like, if you really care about your industry, you'll reinvest in it. He's like, that's the reason why America's economy is kind of failing right now, because no one wants to reinvest into their industry, because that would mean giving somebody the potential of being a competitor, but it has to be done. It has to be done if you care about it, So I enjoy seeing people do it. I love it when, it pumps me up when I start with a class and they're like, oh, we don't get this, or they get frustrated. And then the last day they're coming in with records that, if at their stage, when I was at their stage, there was no way I could have done that.
Yeah.
They just sound so good.
Yeah.
And in 3 months. You know what I'm saying?
It's amazing. And the fact is, you talked about engineers putting black cloths over stuff. I mean, that's literal, but there's, even in a figurative sense, there's a lot of secretive behavior, a lot of withholding, and it all comes from fear, like you said, of competition. Yeah. And the funny thing was, though, that the great engineers that I was able to work with, they were really not like that with me. They were very giving, they were very sharing, and I think the two reasons why: one, I think they realized that it's always evolving, so there's always new tricks, new tips, and also that by giving back to the art form itself, you're helping the whole thing grow. So. Yeah. Okay, you know what that means.
Did I win a car?
It means it's time for our audience to ask some questions. So everybody, turn off your artwork, turn on your cameras, and we have a nice selection of audience today: mixing and mastering graduates, top students, and also Justin Aswell, who's teaching online mixing and mastering and machine as well from Dubspot. So I'm sure you guys have questions for Richie. Anybody, jump right in.
Yeah. Hey, can you hear me?
Yo, what up?
Hey, what's going on? My name's Lud. So my question for you is, what do you think are some of the hardest challenges that you face in today's online music industry, and what do you think are some of the best ways to overcome them as an artist?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't think anybody's ever asked that. Online marketing for your music and online, basically online promotion, is a presence. The challenge is it's not personal anymore, Yeah. It's not about going to a store and unwrapping a record or unwrapping a CD and reading the liner notes and listening and thinking, what was he thinking when he did that, or why? It doesn't necessarily have to be music. It could be the engineer. There are bands that I hate, but their records sound beautiful. And, I would listen to that, just see if I can learn from it. But now it's pretty impersonal. So the challenge is actually, how do you make yourself able to connect with an audience? How do you make yourself able to show your audience, by liking me, I'm accepting. Not only are you liking me, I'm accepting you. We would be pals if, you could talk to me. How do you make yourself? It's when it's not physical anymore. I can go on SoundCloud, click play, and I'm out just like that.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
no, you know what I'm saying? Like there's no, people don't stick around. You know what I mean? Whereas if you're at a record store, or if you're talking to me, we're engaging each other. If you go to a studio and you're begging for some kind of knowledge, or I'll pay somebody to just show me how to use a compressor. You know, you're interacting with somebody, and you can judge right then and there if you're going to like them or not. You know, whereas SoundCloud is you're staring at a play button. So the best, I feel the way I'll tell you just the way I do it is, you know, engage your audience, make them feel like, make somebody feel like you're doing it for them, because you are at the end of the day. I mean, the creation is for yourself, and no one can take away the creation process from the artist. That belongs to them. Once that thing is done, dude, it doesn't belong to you anymore. It belongs to somebody who's going to say they hate it, or they love it, or they don't care about it, or whatever their opinion they're going to formulate. But it doesn't belong to you anymore. It belongs to whoever wants to have it or reject it. So, you know, look at all the great artists. That are popular now. You know, look at them. Look at like Miley Cyrus or Katy Perry or Diplo or Deadmau5. They're all personalities. You know, they're selling their personality. They're not really selling their music. You know, not to say that their music is bad, but they're selling their music. They're selling their personality. So if you're a shy person, become unshy. I guess that's my advice. That's my advice. Become unshy, and get on Facebook and say, hey, what's going on, everybody? Like, I made this for you, you know? And then if nobody listens, be like, oh, man, I'm so stoked that no one listened. I'm going to make another one because you're going to listen to this one, you know what I mean? And just always be excited about being able to make music, because that's what really attracts. That will, you know, that's the sugar that attracts the flies, you know?
Yeah, sure.
And,
Yeah, exactly.
and the rest is up to you. You know, people who listen to music and you know, idolize artists are looking for a connection. They're looking for acceptance. They're looking for something that artist embodies, that they relate to. You know, look. We take Diplo. You know, that's the white dude with soul. That's the urban America's gateway to a community that they normally would be afraid to walk in. You know, and that's just, you know, that's just the truth. And it's fun, and he makes it cool, and he's like, hey, man, there's nothing to be worried about here. Let's get loose, you know?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
then he'll engage you, and by engaging you, I mean the audience, and it'll be, you know, everybody knows what this guy may be like, you know? Everybody knows what Miley Cyrus may be like, a drag. Like, you know, but that's what she's selling, you know? This stuff is there's teams that do this, you know? So you have your work cut out for you, but like that's what, you know, that's what goes on. I mean, it's
create a persona. I mean, that's really create a persona. It's not just about the music. It's you know, the music is great. It's part of it, but there has to be some kind of vision there as well. Let's take another question. Who has one? Yes, Paul Kane.
Yeah, I've got a question on something that you talked about earlier. You're talking about your musical training and how that can affect a mix. Can you just talk about, like, how, you know, the key of the song or whatever, how it would affect a mix?
Absolutely. We could talk about probably the simplest of them all is dissonance, right? How do you know when there's a sour note? You know, how do you know that not only is it a sour note, but we can make a better one? You know, we could re-pitch it. How do we know when to do that? How do we know when something is off rhythm? How do you know, like, maybe you're having a problem with the snare drum, right? And these are programmed drums, and the guy quantized every single beat. So your snare drum and your kick drum are hitting at certain times, and you're like, yeah, I hear the snare drum here, I don't hear it here. I'm compressing it, I still don't hear it. I'm EQing it, and it's just becoming annoying. That's not your fault. You know what I'm saying? That's not. How do you know that? So rhythm, you know, being able to just being able to feel a beat is musical training. You know, people take that for granted. You know, if you could dance, you could be a musician. You know, if you could hum a tune, you could be a musician. Employ that. You know, employ that when you're mixing, because it's gonna make a difference. You know, treat mixing like playing a record. You know, playing an instrument. You know, you're building a dynamic, moving piece of art. Literally, you know, the thing is supposed to move. It's the only, name another time-based medium that'll make you, you know, feel that way under 2 minutes. You know, we stare at a painting and we let it work. You know, but it's a stationary thing. There's no time involved. We'll watch a movie, and it takes 2 hours for us to feel like, you know, what's going on. You listen to a song, it's 2 minutes. You know,
Yeah.
I can feel sad in a second, depending on a chord progression. You know, use that. You know, that's a hook. That sells records. You know, we use that. You know, that's what people who are trained musically, they're trained to, you know, it's like magic tricks. You know, they're trained to be able to do that stuff. You know, and do it well. Like sight reading was great for me because not because, you know, I can just read something, but it made me, when you're sight reading and you're just sort of winging it, you're understanding. Like there's a drugs. There's a learning process that happens when you hit something on the fly. You know what I mean? It's like instinctual learning. It's the quickest you'll ever learn anything when you have to tackle something that you don't know. You know, and that's what sight reading did for me. I was like, oh man, I can understand chords. I can understand, you know, how I could craft a melody line or a bass line or a chord structure. You know, that's where all that special learning comes from. And then you have people like me that talk on and on and on. You're like, you may not learn that quickly. You know, you may not learn that quickly. So,
good question. Other questions? Who else has a question? Justin, go ahead.
Is there any specific plugin or technique that you have recently fallen in love with?
Yeah, I love this question. Okay, plugin. It's an EQ. DMG Audio makes it. It's called. What the hell is it called? Equality. It's called Equality. It's such a great. I love this EQ. I've stopped using. It's a bit of a catch-22 because I have a Pro Tools HD system, and the reason why those things are so expensive is because it's DSP. You don't have to take up any CPU power, right? DMG Audio is native, so you're taking up CPU power, but it's so good. It's I use it. That's one. A technique that I've been learning to accept multi-band compression again.
Did you have to go to therapy, or was it something that you could?
I really hated it. It's not. You know what? And it's because look, I'm a man enough to admit that things that I don't know intimidate me. So. A multi-band compression for a long time, and multi-band limiting even more for a long time has been just something that I just hated. And I recently taught it in a way that I actually was like, oh man, it's not that hard. Like, because we have to teach that in mastering. And I've been really enjoying it now. I've been using it a lot lately because I sort of formulated a way in my head after all these years where it's like, oh, this makes so much sense. That's why these things are there. So that I've been using that lately. Like, so the way I teach it is, if we think about each band as an instrument, right? A compressor could fix or damage a bunch of things, but let's say we know how to use it to fix something. What if we have a frequency? What if the sound is great, whether it's a mix bus or if it's a singular instrument? A kick drum. Say, let's say I have a kick drum that has too much mid-range. It just, has too much knocker sound, right? But the subs are great. But I wish I could control the attack of that sound. So I treat just that band as an instrument. That's how I, see it in my head where it's not intimidating anymore. And then I've been using multi-band compressors on like everything. I kind of feel like I'm cheating, but it's great. I was for a long time. I was like, yeah, I only need multi-band compression. You only one band. Like bass only needs 4 strings.
Yeah.
You're not really playing bass if you're playing 6-string bass. You're playing guitar. I'm like that type of guy. I was that way with the multi-band compressor. But like Danny said, man, teaching is great because you're really teaching yourself sometimes.
A lot of the time.
Yeah.
I definitely agree.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just said I definitely agree with that.
Yeah. Another technique I've been really enjoying is parallel processing, but not compression, not parallel compression, but parallel processing, where I'll either duplicate the track or duplicate a bus and really creatively EQ and creatively compress to my heart's content. I teach to use a lot of use restraint in the beginning, right? Because we want to hear our movements. We don't want to hear excess. Otherwise, we'll be tricked into thinking this is what EQ sounds like. When EQ can be delicate and blow your mind, So what I've been doing is, if I really want something to stand out, like if I want to put my sonic stamp on something, with being, while still being subtle, I'll duplicate something and process it to, high hell, where it just does not sound the way it even should. And then I'll slowly bring the fader up, and I'll raise the fader like to negative 40 dB, and I'll hear it. I'm like, good enough, I'll do that. That I've been doing lately. I have phases. I go through different phases of stuff. So those are the two current things I like.
Good question. I know, Natalia, you must have a question. Are you there? Okay.
10-4.
She said she was in a noisy environment. She might be dealing with that. Other questions? Anybody?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Can you talk about the process of being commissioned for a remix? Like, if you get asked to do a remix but they don't pick it up, do you get paid? How does that work?
No, you don't get paid. It takes a million years to get paid. Don't do it for money. Quit if you're doing it for money. You'll never get paid. It took me this is how I'll divulge this. I don't really care. I got asked to make it a week before Christmas. I got paid for it in April. Okay, that's how it works. I'm still waiting to get paid for Drunken Love, and I won't get paid for Partition because it didn't get picked. The good thing, I don't care, and you should also share the same sentiment if someone doesn't pick your record, because what you're doing is you're adding to your reserve. Someone's going to like something. That's how you should approach everything. Everyone's a human being. Everyone loves pizza. There's no school, telling you why people like pizza. It's delicious. Who doesn't? Oh, see? Blood has pizza. You know what I'm saying? Everyone likes it. If you like something that you make, someone's going to like it. You just haven't found them yet, So you keep it in reserve, and then you're going to use it, and someone's going to be like, yes, this is great, and that's how it works. You keep making music, And
you recycled that production, the Maze of Lage.
I recycle everything. I recycle everything. Like that's my. Oh man, let me tell you, it's a great feeling. It's a good feeling when you have a 4-minute workday because you already made it. It's great.
Yeah.
So
no, I think that's really cool, and then I think that also gives people a sense that when they're working on stuff, even if it doesn't get picked up or they don't even know why they're doing it, to stay organized, back everything up, and to go through it once in a while to see some of these gems that can be repurposed. And I think it takes the pressure off of this song has to be this and this has to be this. Yeah. You never know.
It also boosts your confidence because there'd be a million times where I'm making something, I'm like, this is garbage, but I don't have I don't have the balls to delete it. I just because OCD. So it's like I gotta say I have the hard disk space, might as well save it. And then you come back and you're like, this is pretty good. You maybe I've been having a bad day or a bad week. And same thing with your mixes. When you're mixing, man, I have my thing set every minute. It's a backup every minute, and I'll go look at it, and I'll say, I like what I did here. If I get lost, I'll go back. All right, well, I like that 4:55. I was into that. I'm gonna go back in time and just check it out, and then you start up again, and you don't feel like so much of a bonehead because our egos are involved, whether we like to admit it or not. Our egos are involved when we're mixing and we're making music and we're making something that we want people to like. So if we can't satisfy ourselves, I'm the type of person that really goes in. I'll go in on myself. I hate criticizing other people's work. I feel like that's like bad karma. But oh man, I let myself have it. So it's always, but I'll save it. I may like it tomorrow, or somebody may like it. There's tons of songs that I've given away that I just was like, this is trash. You really like this? Are you kidding me? You're an idiot. And I'm like, oh, it's yours. You know.
What's a typical day for you? What time do you get up? How late do you? What time do you go to bed? Does it change all the time, or do you have sort of a rhythm?
It changes all the time. I'm teaching a lot now at Dubspot because it's just been kind of like a vacation, believe it or not. Like a lot of the EDU guys are like, hey, don't burn out, don't burn out, and I'm like, dude, you don't even know. Like this is vacay. You know, and it's practice. You know, so but I'll wake up at like 6. I have a dog, so I'll do the dog thing. Although my dog's in training camp right now, so I get to sleep in an extra hour, which is nice. I'll do the dog thing. You know, hopefully have a cup of coffee. I'll look in the mirror and say, "You're a good guy. You're gonna be someone." And then
do the affirmations. Yes.
You're right. What's that guy? What's the dude? Guy Smiley. What's his name?
Yeah.
Yeah, the guy from SNL. Right. I go to school, teach, and come back. When I'm working on something, I'm usually staying up late. I'm usually staying up late because, you know, it's whenever the mood hits, you know, you gotta be awake for it. So I'll sit behind the computer or sit behind the piano or guitar, and I'll be like, all right, I'm gonna make something now. And sometimes nothing comes out. You know, sometimes it does. For mixing, it's daytime because I can't do it at night. I can't. My brain goes somewhere after 6 p.m. and it's done, wherever it is, a mixing board doesn't exist. So at night, I don't know what it is. I think it's maybe I'm getting older. I don't know, but I can't mix at night. I can't mix at night. I also haven't been mixing as loud. I never really mixed loud, but now I'm like, I was also never the person to say to you, like, you gotta mix low. You gotta mix low, even though there's tons of benefits for mixing in a low volume. But I was always like, hey, mix it, come whatever, you know. I like to listen to it, not loud, but I've been finding myself mixing a little lower now. So
I think it's maturing, and it's also as you start to work all the time, which a lot of us do, you just can't listen loud.
Yeah.
You know, and it was interesting. You know, 2 weeks ago we talked to Chris Geringer, and you know his listening level was very restrained. It was just, you know, the way I always define it. People talk about SPL. But really the way I try to define it is it's just loud enough to hear the sub melody.
Yeah, Danny, how loud are you listening to when you master?
Not loud, no. But also not so wimpy that I can't hear the low end. You know, as we know, our ears are not equally sensitive to all frequencies. You know, we need a little bit more volume on subs to hear them. That's just the way the human ear is. Yeah. So I have, you know, big B&W Diamond 802s, and I turned it up just loud enough so that I can hear the 808s and the subs. And then I stop right there. I don't push it at all beyond that. It's definitely not a party list level, and I can talk over it. And I can work for, you know, 10, 12, long days and have no fatigue or anything. And then, of course, just like everybody else, I'm very careful when I'm out in New York City because it's very loud. And I walk by construction, I'm that guy covering his ears. Or when the sirens come by. And if I go to a club and, you know, I just had a new son who was born on your birthday.
Yeah, right.
You guys had the same birthday. Yeah, and so I don't get, I'm in baby jail. You know, it's a beautiful, we say it's a beautiful prison. So I don't get to really go out to do anything. I don't even get to see movies where there aren't like talking animals and stuff. You know, that's my life. But even when I did go out, even as an artist, I always protected my ears. You do have to do that as you get older. Or just even when you're young, actually. Everyone out there, protect your ears. Be careful. I know it's very hard for people to restore hearing. Yeah. And if you go to bed at night and you hear ringing in your ears, you have somewhat damaged your ears, and they do recalibrate and come back a little bit, but don't abuse them. And also, you don't make good decisions if you're listening too loud. I think there's a phenomenon called masking where bass can cover up a lot of mistakes. And we all love to rock out, but you do have to train yourself to rock out at a quieter level. So I think that makes sense. And I think it's interesting you say that you can do songwriting more at night. That's where, when the moon comes out and the stars, it's more about the chords and the bass lines and stuff. And then the technical engineering happens during the day. And I would say most of my mentors, they were not mixing or mastering at night.
Yeah.
No, they weren't. They got there at 11 and they left at 8 or something.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's very like I feel like it's a little daunting to me to mix, to sit down behind the console and say, all right, here we go. And I look at the clock, it's 8 p.m. I'm like, no, man, I'm not doing it. It's just like, I don't know, I can't get into it. But at night, I could play because, it's relaxing. I could write a record. It's more of a, not that mixing isn't a release. It is. I mean, I love mixing. It's actually super relaxing to mix a record. But there's a lot of thought. There's way more technical thought process involved when I'm mixing. And it's like an algebra question. I hated high school, but for some reason I enjoyed algebra because it was always an answer.
Yes, there's a system.
It's always an answer.
Yes.
So you just find out part of the problem. So that's what mixing is to me, is identifying the necessity. It's identifying why I'm going to use my answer, my compressor, or my EQ, or my, whatever. So it's like a little like algebra. So I need to use my brain, and I think my brain is starting to realize that it's past 6 p.m. or 8 p.m. or something.
You can write some chords, sit down at the piano. I think we have time for one more question. Anyone have one? Yes, Justin.
I'm really intrigued, especially about this conversation, but I find myself a lot of times in sessions that I feel like there's something that's lacking creatively when I'm mixing. And I remember you earlier talking about some of the sessions you're in, you're doing more than mixing. You're kind of injecting a little bit of your own musicality and creativity. How do you go about is that something you bring up with the artist beforehand? Is that something they know they're getting from you? Or
this is a very, very good question. It's a fine line. I will tell you that I have gotten in my early mixing days, I've gotten in trouble for overstepping my bounds as a mixing engineer. If we're talking about your music that you're producing, I don't think it hurts to be a little creative. But I will tell you to exercise a bit of caution because you're not trying to, you don't want to overstep your bounds and basically negate the production side of your brain because you made a choice. And the thing about production is when you make a choice in producing, and it's an instinct, it's an idea, right? That's what attracts people to your music, the idea, the identity. The reason why is because it's the most primal scratch to an itch. That's what an idea is. Oh man, I want a potato chip. That's an idea. When you eat the potato chip because you maybe have been hungry, you're scratching an itch. Now, musically, if you're scratching an itch, people are attracted to it. That's what it is. You ever listen to a chorus and you're like, oh fuck, I hate this fucking song. I'm sorry, person. Oh man.
Beep, beep. Was I late on that? Okay, sorry.
You listen to a song. Like, let's take "Call Me Maybe," right? "Call Me Maybe," and I know about pop music because I have to make it, so don't judge me. But let's take "Call Me Maybe." That song was like the plague. But I listened to it and I'm like, this is a hit record. This is a hit record because it scratches an itch. There was an unbridled idea there that was never compromised. So when we're mixing, it's good to support the idea. So creatively, if you're mixing your own stuff, support your idea. Don't compromise it. Don't reinvent your wheel that you made during a time when you were trying to make a wheel. We're not trying to make a wheel in mixing. We're trying to, get the car rolling, to the nearest intersection. So a lot of people can get in your car and pay you a ton of money. So that's where I would exercise a little bit of caution. But you also have to identify the sound, of your mixes. You have a sound. If I mix a record and you mix a record, well, they're going to be different because you hear things differently. You interpret sounds differently, and that's your that's your fingerprint. Identify that and support it. My mixes have a sound. Oh, go ahead, Danny.
No, exactly. Creating a signature sound and having a sound that's identifiable is really important, and it's something that evolves. Well, time flies when you're having fun with friends. I just want to thank you, Richie, for letting us into your world today, and for battling your Wi-Fi, slapping it around, beating it into shape. Yeah. And thank you just for all just being so candid and sharing your life and how you got to where you are. And also thank you to the celebrity guest audience there, you guys, with the awesome questions. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, Danny. Thanks, Richie.
And have a great evening. Mixmaster Wyatt Show every 2 weeks, Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern live. Thank you, Richie. Thank you, guys. Have a great evening.